Greetings to one and all, it's your old buddy Jay here, coming at you with another Countermeasures game changer this week. Now I am working through my back catalogue of things that I want to discuss, and the various films and games that I've been looking at over the last few weeks, which I'm now, like I said, just sort of catching up on really. So yeah, I'm posting up quite a lot at the moment, and the latest thing that I want to talk about is Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War. Now before I actually get into that game, I just want to talk briefly about the franchise. Now the Call of Duty franchise, it is a first-person shooter video game which is published by Activision. It started out in 2003, which those games that came out, way back when, like 18 odd years ago now, were originally focused on World War II. Now, if you ever played any of those games, which I did go back and play at some point, they are games where basically it's a first-person shooter where you follow a relatively short campaign of around 5 to 8 hours, depending on which game you're playing, and you have to complete various objectives, and usually you're joining a team of other soldiers that are put into various battles throughout history. Now, some of them are real battles that have happened. So, for example, in the Call of Duty, I think it's World at War, or it might be the World War II. It's World at War, I think. There were a whole series of battles within that game that were based on battles that really happened. Now, the problem with inserting those kind of things into a franchise like this is that the next time you play a game that has no historical reference, people are mistaken in that when they play them, they believe that what they're playing actually is based on something that's actually true and really did happen. So there is a conversation to be had about the moral implications of setting up various campaigns and missions that are fictional versus ones that really did happen. I guess there's a conversation to be had about that at one point. But one thing that is true is that the Call of Duty franchise is still the most popular video game that you can buy and play, and still sells the most amount of games a year. That's not if you count games like Grand Theft Auto, which I believe since that came out in 2013 that sold something like 140 or 160 million copies or something ridiculous, because it's been on PS3, PS4, PS5 and all the Xboxes, and it's just that is just a juggernaut that never stops. But even so, even though that has been incredibly popular, the Call of Duty series is consistently selling well every year. So basically around November time there's always a Call of Duty that pops up, and originally the earlier games were developed by Infinity Ward, and also Treyarch and Sledgehammer are also are two other studios that work on the design of these. So you'll have one of them working on 1 year while the one's being released, and then the next one will be released while the other team's working on that. So it's like a sort of two to 3 year cycle. Every now and again they skip ahead slightly just to get the games out. I guess they've got a lot of money these days and their teams are extensive, so they're going to be churning these out as quickly as possible. So there have been a lot of games in the series. Now, the original Call of Duty, like I said, came out in 2003, and I don't believe that it was actually the original first-person shooter. I think there were versions that came out on PCs and whatever, prior to that date, but I think Medal of Honor was actually one of the earlier ones that first came out that had a sort of set up the rules really of the kind of you experiencing these different historical moments and taking part, and ultimately the quality of that franchise dipped, and Call of Duty just seemed to get the they got the recipe right. So ultimately the gameplay hasn't really changed that much. You move from objective to objective, as you can see here, just like taking bad guys out from behind cover, and then eventually you reach your mission objective, you blow something up or you rescue somebody, and then it moves on to the next part of the story. Now, when when it first came out, it was just very simple, which is like, shoot these people, move ahead, shoot these people, move ahead. And as time went on, people start, after about the fourth game, people are a bit like, well, World War II is interesting and everything, but how is it relevant to me? How is it relevant to my generation? So after a while, shooting old tanks and using old weapons and all that kind of stuff can get a little bit of fatigue, I think. So they did something around, I'm trying to remember what year it was. I think it was 2007 when the very first Modern Warfare came out, which is obviously part of the franchise, officially Call of Duty 4. Modern Warfare basically brought everything up to date, so that you were getting to experience using weapons that were much more recent. You were able to use modern sort of bombing runs and all this different kinds of stuff. So you had like lasers on your sights, etc., etc. So that brought it up to date, and also introduced a really large, a really big selling point for this entire franchise, which is the multiplayer online fighting situations, if you like. There's a whole load of them, which are ultimately kind of team deathmatch, capture the flag, that kind of stuff. It was Modern Warfare that really introduced that, and and introduced it successfully. I think there had been other brands that had attempted to do it before, and I think even Call of Duty World War II may have tried to do it before that as well, but it was the Modern Warfare series that really pushed the envelope on that, and propelled the Call of Duty franchise into the stratosphere, basically. And that was all down to a combination of things coming together all at the same time. I guess the technology of how these games work, the programming of how these games fit together, the interactivity of one player with another, the quality of what you were playing, as in sort of twitch shooting, as they call it, where the lag of the internet was getting to a point where actually people could fight against each other in an arena, and it would be sort of fairly competitive and fairly balanced. So all of those things coming along, and better internet connections, etc., meant that this franchise just suddenly skyrocketed and became one of the best-selling video games of all time, and still is. So over the years there have been various other variations of the Modern Warfare sort of sub-franchise, if you like. Now that's the first one I really remember playing, is Modern Warfare, and I actually couldn't believe how amazing it was at the time, because it was doing things like you were getting in a boat, and you were able to use the PS3 6-axis to row the boat and things like that, and it was just starting to introduce all these other game mechanics that I'd never really experienced in with a console before. I primarily have always been a console player, even though PCs are clearly the master race. I have always been into consoles mainly. I like to plug in and pick up and play, and not worry too much about having to download drivers and all that sort of stuff, because time is limited. I think that Modern Warfare just ticked all of the boxes, and actually that one had a very compelling story. And I think there's even a moment in that, spoilers for like 14, 15 odd years ago, but there is a moment in that where you're playing a main character who dies in a nuclear explosion, which is something that hadn't really happened before, where your main protagonist actually dies and you take control of multiple soldiers. So that is something that has been copied and echoed throughout many of the other games in this franchise and other franchises, and not done as well either. So I think that was a time that it really sort of hit home, and they really were innovating, and that was the beauty of the team at Infinity Ward at the time. So then there's obviously been a remastered version of that since, which has brought the Modern Warfare game up to date of the onto the most recent platforms, and I guess everybody's kind of waiting for that to be done again for the PS5 and the Xbox Series X and S. Then you had Modern Warfare 2 and Modern Warfare 3. Then they re-released Modern Warfare in 2019 as a sort of reboot of the franchise, which again, that game was incredibly good. They really did go all out on making that their flagship, and yeah, it was very good. The gameplay and the mechanics and everything behind these games now are just incredible. So yeah, as you can see, like the gameplay here is this is from the most recent one, which is the Black Ops Cold War, and yeah, this game now the mechanics are amazing, and obviously the time it's taken the artists and the designers to put all of this stuff together. I mean, it must have taken them such a long time to build all of these realistic set pieces, and the fundamentals are the same. You shoot your way through certain sections using a variety of different weapons, and each mission is slightly different in as much as you may be blowing up a gun, or you might be taking trying to get some intel, etc. And as time's progressed and the hardware has got better, things like the surrounding environments have become much more interesting. So back in the original one, you were running from one sort of blocky building to another. You may be able to open the door of one of them and sort of stand in it while you're shooting up the road or whatever. Whereas now, as you can see, like you're going through these sections where there's burning buildings, there's gravestones, there's vegetation on the buildings. A lot of these areas aren't, while essentially they are corridor shooters, they are starting to improve them to the point where you have multiple ways to achieve your objective by kind of walking around or going through secret doors or going over the tops of roofs, all that kind of stuff, which does definitely improve the flow of the gameplay and give you many more options. Now, I would say that the problem that the franchise is starting to have, in my eyes, that this particular, this latest installment definitely does have, is they're starting to introduce too many RGB. What am I talking about? They're starting to introduce too many role-playing elements. RPG? Yeah, I'm having a moment. Role-playing. Yeah, the role-playing game elements they've started included in these games have started to detract a little bit about what makes them fun. So there's whole sort of side missions that you can do. You have in this one, you have like a central base where you're doing multiple missions in different orders and things like that. And I don't really want that from a Call of Duty game. I want it to, I want the campaign to be fairly linear and tell me an interesting story. And this story isn't that great. I mean, the acting and the voice acting and everything is amazing. And they've obviously spent a lot of time in getting the finesse and the finish of all of this, to a point where it's second to none, really. I mean, this Black Ops Cold War was actually developed by Treyarch and Raven, and published by Activision. And I think they've spent a long time sort of overthinking it. Really, it doesn't need to be any more than go down a corridor and shoot things. And now they've started introducing these RPG elements where you have these sort of sub-objectives, and if you don't pick up a certain piece of intel, then you don't necessarily complete the mission to 100%. And I can understand why they're doing it. They want people to have a certain amount of replayability within the campaign. It's something that it was always criticised for, which is you whiz through it in like 5 to 8 hours, and then it's kind of done, and then you're just left with the multiplayer. But it's such a small part of what actually makes this entire franchise successful, and I think they need to ditch that element and just stick to what they had before, which is just a very simple story that just plays out and allows you to use different weapons and enjoy it. And really what it is the campaign is really a kind of glorified set of missions to show you how to use the mechanics, and then the real meat and potatoes of the game is the multiplayer, which is what you're seeing here. So within every Call of Duty that you purchase, obviously aside from the campaign, I mean, people always complain about how much these games cost. What you get in for this game now is quite incredible. You get this, these campaigns. Actually, I think this campaign was about 15 hours. Actually, this one, and then you've got the multiplayer aspect, which you know, is your traditional, like I was saying before, you know, player versus player kind of arenas where you have to take each other out in like team death matches and things like that. And there's a whole load of subcategories within those. So there's things like sabotage, where you have to set bombs down to blow up the area, and then there's capture the flag, where you capture the flags, and then there's you know, ground war, which is like basically ripped off from Battlefield, where you take over these massive sections, and you've got like hundreds of people playing against each other. So you know, as technology has advanced, and you know, the kind of multiplayer used to be like 4v4, then it got sort of 8v8 and 16v16. Now you're having like up to 100 players fighting each other in these massive arenas. It's just really exhilarating and really fun. Everyone has different loadouts, so you know, that is something that's really interesting. I do find that the multiplayer, if you don't stay on top of it, and if you're not sort of logging in every day and you're not really keeping up with it, you know, if you give yourself a break and then go back into it, you will get your ass whipped for several hours before you get yourself back up to speed again, because it really is, you know, it's so popular that the really good players are, you know, they're on the edge all the time, and you know, to stand a chance of being competitive to any level, you really have to make it your kind of mission in life to play it for a couple of hours every day, which is incredibly hard when you know, there isn't much time, and also there's so much other good stuff to play. So that is an upside and a downside. So if you want to be that competitive, it's great, but if you just want to hop in and have a quick sort of fun game, chances are you'll get your butt handed to you by like a 9-year-old Japanese kid who's been playing it non-stop for the last 68 hours or something. So the other element that's been added to this franchise, which is, you know, there are actually two elements that have been added, but one of the elements that has been added is the thing called Warzone, which is essentially copying the battle royale structure that games like PUBG originally started, and now they've taken that and just turned it into this epic sprawling open map where, you know, you and your team of potentially, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4 players can work your way through a map, and you know, you basically parachute in, you pick up weapons, you collect you know, different materials and money and things like that, improving your character as you're going along. So you know, if you win the match, then you get to keep all that stuff, and you know, just generally getting XP for taking out other players. And the whole idea is that you are dropped into a map where there is a massive circle that's slowly shrinking around you. Now, like I said, that originally came from a game called PUBG that was incredibly popular at the time, and still is very popular. It's the original you know, game, that the battle royale game that you know, meant that, you know, eventually it would end up with potentially just one victor out of, you know, like 50 to 100 odd people who were playing the game. And it's very exciting. So as the circle closes, everybody has to get closer and closer and closer until eventually there has to be a victor. There has to be a winner of the game. So it's incredibly, you know, and that's where the term winner, winner, chicken dinner comes from, because PUBG, you know, at the end you used to get your chicken dinner as a little kind of thumbs up for your victory. And then that got taken over, you know, and that, well, PUBG was basically essentially the greyest game you could ever play. So Fortnite came along and turned it into a very colourful and exciting battle royale game, basically exactly the same concept, but everything was much more vibrant and lots of neon and lots of you know, kind of fun interacting characters. So you had like Iron Man and Wolverine and all these kind of guest stars coming into it, and it's still incredibly popular, and is still you know, even today is, you know, rivals Call of Duty's popularity. But then Call of Duty were like, well, we could just take that concept and apply our engine to it and see what happens. And it has been absolutely massive. So now Warzone is like its own living, breathing thing. So yeah, so now the you know, Call of Duty Cold War came out and just kind of updated all the maps stuff. The map actually hasn't I don't think it's when it launched, it was doing as well as the Modern Warfare version of Warzone. But I understand since then it has actually had a lot of updates and a lot of improvements, and yeah, I mean, it has a massive following. And the fourth section that comes, the fourth part of the Call of Duty franchise is that you obviously get the zombies part, which is like a kind of a wave-based fighting section where you have 3 or 4 characters. You can team up with your friends online, and then you just fight these waves and waves of zombies, and that has its own story in itself. And then more often than not, you've got different characters within within your hub when you're looking at which game you want to play. You've got different skins for your characters. You've got different they can have like pet dogs and different weapons and different loadouts. So rather than just the old days where you'd be going in with one of 4 or 5 machine guns, the same as everybody else, now you've got multiple choices. And I guess that throws up a question of whether or not the balance is ever quite right. I think as time goes on, the balance gets better and better, and they do end up getting that sort of spot on. But of course, until everybody's playing it all at the same time and they're all pushing the servers, etc., how are you ever really going to know that without really being able to test it on a live kind of open world where everybody can actually have a go at it, and you know that the servers can have hundreds and hundreds of people all doing a sort of similar thing. So that's the only way really to improve that, and then they just keep giving updates and updating everything to make it better, and as time goes on it does get better. So I have to say that while I am not a mad fan of the campaign of this one, I do still think the mechanics are really, really good. I would like them to drop the RPG stuff, like I said. The multiplayer stuff is just out of this world. I mean, you can spend your whole life just refining and tweaking and making everything, making your character better and getting yourself ready for combat in Warzone and all that kind of stuff. So I think that what this game has to offer for, I think it's around sort of £60 to £70 now, is amazing. I think it really is out there, and you can see why this is still one of the most exciting franchises out there. And I am looking forward every year to that November time when it comes out, because I like playing through the campaigns, and more often than not I get hooked into multiplayer, take my character up to level 50, and then I'm kind of done with it. But I do have a lot of fun in those matches. So I do think this is a good game. It's not the greatest of all of them. If I was giving the overall franchise a mark out of 10, I would have to give it a 10, because it really does some interesting things and has changed and developed over the years without actually changing too much of what fundamentally makes it successful. For this particular game, I am going to have to give this one a 7, just because even though all of them, like I said, all the mechanics are always getting better and better, and what the actual game itself has to offer you is very exciting. I do think that people mainly buy this certainly a huge amount of people buy this to play the campaign, and I don't think this is the strongest campaign. So it's a 7 out of 10 for me, and if you get a chance to play it, I absolutely suggest you do. I'm a little bit late to the party because this did come out I think last November, and of this footage that I recorded was way back then, but I haven't really quite had a chance to get to it until now. So hopefully you'll get a chance to play it. If you haven't played it already, you're probably already ahead of it, well ahead of this, further ahead than I am. And I guess that's all I have to say, except for be good, stay safe, and be kind to one another. Cheers.